In this video, we moved the power steering to the column using a Saturn Vue power steering module. Can we get it to work? Stick around to find out. Let's go. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new, I'm Matt. Let's go ahead and continue working on the 1.8 Chevy Cruze Turbo project that is all-wheel drive. One of the issues we ran into last time, well, simply the fact that I had to remove the power steering in order to make this conversion work. So we need to come up with the solution for that. And here's what we got. Check this out. Wow! Oh shit, I probably should have slammed that down. We got this fine unit off of eBay. And what it is, boys and girls, this thing is pretty light. Oh, they wrapped it pretty good. Oh, it looks like a pretty fresh unit to me. So this is a power steering unit, one of them steering column jobbers. So electric power steering will just somehow fabricate this into our current steering column. Steering in, got our power out there. And to control this unit, we ordered this little doodad. Not a whole lot to it. It's a power steering control module for this particular power steering unit. We'll have to take a look at the wiring diagram, but the notion is this plugs into here, this talks to the damn thing. We might be missing something. Might be missing the power going here, which is no bueno. We'll have to figure that out. Maybe we can just put a connector there. Sure, it'll be something simple. And then we have this little knob here that will adjust the amount of power steering that you want from 100% all the way down to none, back down to manual steering. So that's a cool little feature. Part of our instructions over here. Way to go, Matt. So we'll have to piece that back together, but here's our instructions. Yeah, they're in here somewhere. Yeah, there we go.
What's all that Spanish junk right there?
So all the instructions we need to wire this thing up. I wish I could say that this was going to be easy, but we need to pull our stock column out and somehow integrate that doodad into this guy. So let the fun begin.
Let the games begin. Hi-oh, hi-oh, hi-oh. There he is. I'm very aroused.
Let's go ahead and remove the steering column. Why it's glued in there like that, I do not know. That's gross. So I designed a mounting plate for this power steering unit. I took the stock column completely apart, and these are the little bits that I am going to use. This is the original steering column shaft in which our steering wheel will mount up to. It's got a specific spline count, and we're going to make this mount to this. We're going to have to shorten it down. We need to keep it to 23 inches in total length. This guy splines into here, which these splines go all the way down to here. So we may shorten that up a little bit. Realistically, this is going to be the only spot that I will weld for the steering shaft. And then this plate that I did design in Illustrator, sent it over to Send Cut Send. It basically is replicating the stock mounting plate for the column. Here's all the used stuff, or original steering column stuff, in which I was gonna try and retrofit this to work, but the spline output of this power steering motor is different. So our collapsible shaft that comes out from the steering column and connects to the steering rack itself, and it's a little different. We got that sitting right here as well. So this does not mount up to the power steering unit itself. So I found this guy on eBay, which is meant for the Saturn Vue, also the Chevy Equinox. This fits right up to this power steering unit. The only thing we need to do is quite possibly shorten the length of this, because the original one is quite a bit shorter. And then we also need to figure out how to mount this to this power steering rack. It looks very similar. There it is there. It's kind of a D-bar, which the Saturn Vue Chevy Equinox has as well, but for whatever reason, it won't slide on there. I think this is a little bit more snug. So we may just try to open this up a little bit, try and get the fit, either that or we're already gonna have to shorten this thing. We can cut this off and cut this end off, mate them together, but I'm trying to keep the amount of welding on the steering shaft as little as possible, so that might be 2 welds there. So let's go ahead and mock this thing up and kind of cobble something together that will work with the Cruze. Okay, let's see. This part fits up. Looks pretty good to me. This guy should sit a little something like that. So we'll mark it off, tack this, and then see how it fits up in the car. Well, what we need to do, boys and girls, is we need to shorten this down because the steering column is way too low. We need to move it way up. I did purposely make this longer than I needed it to be for this exact reason, just in case. So I'm gonna take some measurements, we'll make a cut, we'll lower this thing down, which effectively raises our steering column up. So time to cut out these tack welds and cut this thing down. It is hot. We've got the power steering column modification kind of mocked up, and I just kind of lightly popped on some of the plastics just to make sure everything clears. And we're looking pretty good, boys and girls. When I sit in the seat, I can see the dash pretty clearly. I do realize with this racing seat, I do need to move it up a little bit and forward, not because of the steering wheel in particular, just because this base is pretty much on the floor. So we need to build some standoffs here in the future, but not a big deal. That's some progress there. Now, just need to mate the steering shaft together. So let's figure that out next. It'll take some thinking. We got all the wire and everything we need to wire this thing up. Basically, we have a big power wire that will go directly to the battery. There's a spot on the battery itself that has a little bit of a built-in fuse panel, if you will, where the electric power steering originally went. So we'll wire that into that. We got this little connector, this little kit, plug into the power steering itself, or the module. We'll go ahead and strip this back a little bit. This thickness of wire is a little bit overkill, but we'll make it work. I should get it done. Woo! Got it nice and crimped. Cover some of that excess wire where I stripped a little bit of it back, just a little too much. Just heat shrink that. cut us a length of ground wire. Got her all crimped in there. But heat shrink this bad boy. Let's see what our instructions say here. Position 1, 12 volt directly from the battery. Perfect. Snap that guy right in there. And you know who in here? If we magically squeeze this retaining clip on. There we go. Can't pull it out, so I think we're golden. Now I need to feed everything through the firewall. I'm just gonna use a welding rod, push it through, tape things up with a little bit of electrical tape, slide it on through, then we'll connect it to the battery. Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Let's get after it. Got our wire wrapped up to our power and ground wire. We'll just go ahead and feed that through. There we go. Okay, we got the power all wired into our 80 amp breaker here. And then our ground comes right to this pillar. Got everything all pulled in nicely. Now we need to find a place for this pot to live. Kind of check my clearances back here. I think it would be pretty cool if the knob came out right here. So it'd look a little something like that, where I can just... The cool thing about these little pots here, we can always change this knob out. Let's find us a guitar knob or something like that. Turn that bitch up to 11. Uh-oh. Well, that went off into the void somewhere, so we might have to do that after all. All right, let's see if we can just eyeball this. Looks like a good spot to me. Perfecto. Now we got to get rid of that ribbing, that support there, just in the area. Now we need to strip the wires back on these guys here, connect our yellow to our yellow and our gray to gray. We have the power steering unit all wired in along with the control module. I did manage to find my little turn knob here on the floor. So we got everything all mounted here. I have the key on just kind of temporarily jammed into one of the fuses. When you key on, we'll get our 12 volt source from there. Then here's what we added, the power with our ground. Everything's all nicely tucked away. We can put all our panels and crap back in there. So essentially need to connect that guy down to the power steering rack, or in this case, it's just a rack, it doesn't have power steering. Our power steering is right here. So I'll take some measurements, and what I'm going to do is marry these two parts. I'm going to cut right about here, and then just lop this guy off right here, and we'll weld those together. It'll be pretty straightforward, so let's go ahead and get after that, get that out the way, so that way we can move on. Let's get after it. We got this thing all tacked up. We're gonna use some ER80OS D2, a little bit stronger of an alloy. Initially tack welded this thing with the MIG, but since this thing is solid rod, so I got the TIG welder run on 220 amps, see if we can't really penetrate into this metal here. Alright, I'm gonna let that cool for a little bit. This thing does have a bunch of paint that's cooking off. And there's oil inside this tube. So it's definitely gassing out. And we'll grind these booger MIG welds out and we'll TIG weld it up. While that's cooling down, I'm gonna go ahead and weld this bracket up. We're using the same rod. This is chrome moly, so you need to use that higher tensile strength rod. I'm gonna go ahead and get after it. Okay, we have the steering shaft going from the column to the steering rack all welded up. I did about 3 passes on this thing off camera. So I'm gonna go ahead and toss a little bit of paint on this thing. We'll let that dry. And then we'll continue working on the steering shaft going to the electric power steering. I'll touch on what I did off camera here. I also finished welding up this bracket. I'm pretty happy with how it came out. And we'll toss a little bit of paint on it too. We do need to weld the steering column support bracket here. This little tube that I've cut in half that houses this bearing right here. But to keep this from rusting up any further, we'll paint it a little bit. But we'll leave this area here where I'm going to weld. We'll just not paint that. It'll just have to stand as is. But to keep this thing from rusting up any further, because live in Houston in the South, all this stuff, man, it's just humid, hot. It will rust up pretty quick, as you can see already. Go ahead and scuff this stuff up. A little bit of that red Scotch Brite. Not trying to make this a showpiece, just protect it from the elements a little bit. So I need something for this paint to stick onto. Okay, so the steering shaft going to the electric power steering. What exactly are we looking at here? Since the camera's been off, this tube right here is splined, and I just shortened it down so that way this tube going into here is splined. It came from the original Cruze steering shaft, and I just cut it down towards where, as you saw a little bit earlier in the video, had to heat this up. It had like a glue, and it's got this spline section that goes up about 2 inches into this tube, which is splined all the way up to here. So I heated that glue up, pressed it down in here. I cut the shaft off that comes out of the electric power steering, and I tapered or chamfered everything so that way we can really get down and weld into the center of this. You can see that this tubing is pretty thick. I don't think it's quite 1/4 of an inch, but it might be. It's pretty damn close. Same for the tubing from the original steering shaft here. It's about the same thickness. They're almost the same diameter, pretty close. Took a measurement, I think it was like, okay, I don't remember off the top of my head, but they're pretty damn close. So, we've got this tack welded, got a pretty strong tack there, and we're pretty well lined up. It does need a little bit of a tweak, So I'm gonna hold the camera as steady as I can. I put you on a tripod so you can get a better visual. See if we can't get y'all a little bit of a bird's eye view. So if we turn this, it's pretty straight, but it does look like it leans a little bit that way. Just a touch. And there's really no good way for me to line all this stuff up because all these tubings are different sizes. So it leans that way a little bit, in which we have our tack right here on this side of the shaft. So here's our tack. Here's that part of the steering wheel. So I think what I'll do is I'll take my little Dremel and this very thin cutting wheel. We're going to do this like a tree. We're just going to kind of notch it right there. And then we'll slightly, just ever so slightly bend it towards us. Try to get this thing as perfectly as lined as possible. Once I do that and get that happy, we'll tack it. And in order not to overheat any of the parts internally, we're just really going to take our time. I'll probably start out not even adding any filler and just hitting the root of this thing. We'll do a couple centimeters at a time, let it cool, come around, and then we'll end up filling this with filler rod. I'm pretty sure this metal is stainless steel. So we're going to use some ER309L, which is meant for welding dissimilar metals together, or unknown metals, because I am really not sure what kind of metal this is. I do not believe. But the way things are in Houston, none of this has rusted up, so I'm thinking it's stainless. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll capture some of that on video. We'll get closer to wrapping this project up. We're on the last leg. We're going downhill, buddy. You know what I mean. It's no longer an uphill battle. All right, let's get at it. See if we can make something happen here before this wheel completely disintegrates. There's really no good way for me to. All right, we'll do our best. All right, we got ourselves a nice little hairline gap there. Hopefully this weld didn't break in the process. I did use that stronger filler metal. Dug in there pretty good. Been holding up this far. All right, let's see if we can't persuade this thing a little bit. See what that gets us. Still leaning just a little bit, actually. All right, I think that will get it. If I just close that gap up and then tack it, I think we'll be golden. Put something on it that has a little bit of weight to it. Can we balance it? I don't think so. Man, I really could use another hand. See if we can't rig this up somehow. Stay. Let's tack this before it falls apart. We got this thing tacked up, and I'll hold the camera as steady as I can. I mean, that looks pretty damn centered to me, boys and girls. Look at that center bolt right there. All right, I'm happy with that. We got that tacked. I'm going to, this thing is getting pretty warm. Gonna tack it on what I assume perpendicular corners here. this side. Don't want to get it too hot. All right, we'll let that cool down for a little while. And then we'll come back and just kind of weld in between these tacks. Yeah, that's not hot. Whew, that's hot. But I can smell the glue heating up in here. So I'm gonna give it some time to cool down. But I think we're looking pretty mint as far as eyeball on this thing. Sure, it's a few thousandths out, but who cares? Race car. I gave this thing a good 40 minutes or so to cool down. It's cool to the touch. So now I'm just going to weld this root right here. We'll let it cool down. I'm just gonna rinse and repeat. I gave this thing a moment to cool down. And you can see right here, off camera, what I did was I cut this weld out. I ground it out because it was just porous. It was that other filler rod where it just wasn't quite happy. There's this little booger here that I wanted to smooth out as well. So I'm going to fill that root in real quick. We'll hit that other side and then we'll let this cool down and we'll move on. I gave this thing a chance to cool down. Now we just need to fill in this concave area. We just need to bridge these two together, fill it in, do a little bit at a time, really punch it in there, rinse and repeat. Hopefully we can finish this thing up today. Alright, let that cool down for a little bit. Alright, let's keep welding this thing up. Boys and girls, we got this thing all welded up. The paint has dried on this bracket. I got all the paint off where I'm going to weld that support sleeve, brace, whatever you want to call it. Let's see if this thing fits over everything. And it does. Now our next step, final step before this goes back in the car. Thread these in by hand real quick. So I may need to lower this whole shaft. If we recall, this is pretty much splined together. It's got some glue in here from the factory. Not sure why they do that, but maybe because this is magnesium. I don't know, it doesn't look like some sort of alloy. Still a little on the toasty side. So here is part in question, and we have to strategically place this thing because the ignition switch, and I'll show you here soon, this part lines up, keeping everything horizontal. Point is, this will go here. This has to line up just like so. I did tack this thing before, so we got that as a marker or a guide. This guy will keep us. Use a little welding rod to space this out properly. But there's the concept. We're going to weld this support brace here, or tubing, to our mounting plate. All that will bolt right in. All the OEM stuff bolts up to this guy here. Then we'll be done with this. So we have this guy right here. Lines up with this guy. Like so. Get my damn key now that it's locked. And just need it to be parallel with how this bracket mounts. There we go. Let's go ahead and tack this in real quick like. Alright, we got this thing tacked together. Nothing really moved. So now I'm going to remove this part, get these zip ties out of there, and we're just going to kind of stitch weld it. We'll do about a 1-inch weld here. Here on this other side as well as that other side. We'll just tack weld this up. Woo! Then we can assemble the thing, toss it back in the car, see how it works out. Let's go. Home stretch, folks, home stretch. Alright, we got this thing all welded up. Ground it down a little bit here so the turn signal and the ignition switch can slide over. Now I'm just going to put a little Loctite, these bolts that hold all this together. And we'll zip them in, tighten them down. Okay. It's gonna be fun. Maybe it won't be too bad. We got it all finished. Everything is installed in the car. Turned out great if I do say so myself. There's our shaft going up to our steering box. Only thing left to do is plug in the power and hope this bitch doesn't catch on fire and burn this house down. Let's check it out. Let's see if it actually works. I was hoping I could take it for a test spin, but I still need to fix something on the all-wheel drive system. We'll at least be able to know if the power steering is working. We still need to fix this situation, so rather than get ahead of myself, we'll tackle that on another episode. I need to narrow the rear end just a little bit, but let's go ahead and test out this power steering. Let's go. Yeah, let's see. So far, so good. Go ahead and turn this off for the moment. All right, we're all snugged up. All right, let's see if this works. I heard it click on. Turn this all the way down. Took a moment for it to click off. Now it's hard as hell. Turn this up. Oh man. Night and day. Night and day. Oh, what the hell, we'll go ahead and fire her up for a moment. Call that a success, boys and girls. Very happy with the way it came out. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't. And until next time, peace out. Peace out.